What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and there's been some shenanigans going on within the games industry again. I know, shocking, right? From the Fallout TV show retconning beloved past games and driving the entire fan base into a frenzy, Ubisoft confirming that they don't care about you whatsoever and showing customers they should not expect to own their games even if they buy them, and Capcom has apparently bent the knee to the woke mind virus. There's a lot to go over, but let's start with Fallout because this is kind of a mess to put it lightly. This section of the video will have spoilers for the Fallout series as a whole, by the way. I'm going to talk about how the Amazon Prime show confirms who allegedly dropped the first nuclear bomb, and as well as how the show might have retconned a beloved game from the franchise. Still here? Alright, let's get into it. So I finished Fallout on Amazon Prime recently. I thought it was mostly fine myself. I found the middle part of the show to be an absolute slog, and the show somewhat redeemed itself in its final episode, but I personally didn't think the show was amazing. Sure, it looked great and all that, but there were some issues, especially a big fat man nuke bomb part where Amazon Prime and Bethesda basically retconned Fallout New Vegas in a way. Or did they? Well, let's explore that. We know that in New Vegas, the NCR, or New California Republic, had basically restarted society on the surface during the events of New Vegas. Sure, there were still big bugs eating people, and raiders could still technically invade your home and kill you, but it's progress, I guess. Anyway, the NCR had one of its biggest settlements called Shady Sands. You travel there in the very first Fallout game shortly after its opening. And everything I just mentioned are from games that Bethesda themselves did not develop, by the way. Remember that Bethesda didn't make Fallout, they bought the IP from its owners, and that's how Fallout 3, 4, and 76 exist. As well as this new TV show. The original games were also not first or third person shooters, Bethesda did that as well. Most people will tell you that New Vegas is the best Fallout game, which likely pisses off Todd Howard greatly. Because that means the best modern Fallout game is something he didn't have a hand in creating himself. Not only that, but New Vegas was made insanely fast. Apparently it took around 18 months to make the entire game. A year and a half, dude. That's insanely fast considering what they made and the quality of the content that's available in that game. Fallout 3, by the way, took 4 years, and Fallout 4 took 5 years to make. So naturally, Todd Howard was salty as hell that Obsidian Entertainment outdid his studio and made a game fans loved much more in around less than half the time it took them to make Fallout 3. Why is this important? Well, in the TV show, they basically retconned New Vegas' events from happening as well as previous Fallout games too. There's a conveniently placed chalkboard that Lucy finds in one episode while exploring that explains the timeline of Shady Sands and New Vegas, where we see one part that says 2277 being the fall of Shady Sands followed by an arrow pointing to a nuke going off, which Lucy and Maximus find that crater the nuke left, confirming the entire town of over 30,000 people was destroyed. Fans took this to mean that the events of New Vegas were retconned since again the NCR made a fully functioning society around this time. But if they were nuked into oblivion, then the events of New Vegas wouldn't make any sense timeline-wise. Although it should be stated that the chalkboard does not put a date on when that nuke goes off, and the fall of Shady Sands happened in 2277. Which could mean anything, of course. The fall of the town could be due to civil war, maybe raiders aplenty invaded, or a massive ghoul invasion. We don't really know exactly. But all we do know is that eventually Shady Sands was wiped off the map by a nuke, but again, an exact date is not given to when this happened, which could have cleared this all up, but leave it to Todd Howard to be vague like always. The show also distinctively shows that Season 2 will be heading to New Vegas, but Vegas is shown to have no lights and looks like a ruin, which again, does not line up with the events of New Vegas as a game which was a thriving spot of opportunity and, well, of course, death too. This makes fans believe that Todd Howard has been jealous of New Vegas for years at this point and hates that the best game in the series was not made by his hands. And this was his way of sticking a middle finger to Obsidian Entertainment and quite literally nuking their games out of the franchise's existence. Shady Sands is also moved from where it's technically found in the original Fallout when compared to the show, as it would be hundreds of miles between where Lucy and Maximus find the hole and so on, so the whole retcon business is kind of nonsense to begin with. And of course, there's the realization that the first nuke was actually dropped by Vault-Tec themselves, or at least it's alluded to that being the case anyway. The whole reason for the nuclear end of the world happening is kinda stupid if I'm being real with you guys within the confines of the show. That America and Vault-Tec basically pushed the world's superpowers into nuclear war on purpose, in order to raise the planet's surface of their competitors and instead live underground in vaults via cryogenic stasis. Which we know is possible, because that's what happens to your character in the beginning of Fallout 4. I don't know about you, but the fact that Vault-Tec and America's first option was to nuke the entire planet to rid the world of people with opposing ideologies like communism is beyond insane to me. It would have been far smarter on Vault-Tec and America's part to create a biovirus of some kind and then spread it across the cities and countries of their competitors, and kill their people and their leaders through biological warfare instead of, nuking the entire planet being the first option. Cause now you gotta deal with big ass bugs and death claws. I don't consider that a win at all in my book. Vault-Tec could have instead developed EMPs to shut down their enemies' systems, then invade them to avoid nuclear war and retain natural resources. I don't know, man, literally any other option besides let's just nuke the whole planet straight up is a better idea than what the show presented. And what Fallout's TV show did here is kind of like if the Walking Dead TV show just explained why the zombie outbreak happened. Any explanation they could come up with, a biological weapon, maybe it was aliens or some ancient bug they found in the ocean that had some old virus in it, whatever, it doesn't matter. Any explanation they could have had for the zombie outbreak would disappoint people no matter what. And I think them explaining why the war happened was a bad idea in my opinion as well. While I do think the show is fine for what it is, and again it definitely looks great in terms of production value, I think the Fallout TV show, so far anyway, kind of needlessly makes the franchise more confusing and worse in a way as well. Because if I had to choose between this show existing or New Vegas' timeline being kept intact, the choice is pretty simple in my opinion. Because New Vegas was great. Hell, I want that game remastered or even remade completely with modern day bells and whistles than any other Fallout game in existence. And I think Todd Howard going as far as potentially nuking not only Obsidian Entertainment's but the original Fallout game's timeline in a sense as well is beyond stupid to me. And again, need I remind you, Bethesda did not create Fallout to begin with, they simply bought the IP. Which is also very dangerous in my opinion, because this shows that companies can simply buy something they didn't create. Sort of like how Disney bought Star Wars, and then through time and content slowly retcon and change anything they don't like about the original creator's vision. And that's kind of how I see Fallout's TV show. It's not nearly as bad as modern Star Wars, of course. I'm not saying that, but the principles of changing things that the current creators can't measure up to, like making a better game than New Vegas for example, is beyond stupid and really petty to be honest. This would be like one day someone buys the Dark Souls franchise and retcons it completely because they can't make a game that's better than what From Software did, you know? It just feels honestly pathetic on Bethesda's part to do this. Of course, we don't know the full extent of the New Vegas changes since again the show is going there in Season 2, but this opens up a whole other can of worms since New Vegas had so many permutations and choices throughout the game. And I guess now Bethesda will just be picking which choices are considered canon when New Vegas shows up? Is Mr. House still around even if you got rid of him in your playthrough? What about Hoover Dam, Caesar's Legion? There's so many things that Todd Howard could be screwing up here going forward. Which does make me roll my eyes, and I'm not really looking forward to Season 2 now, knowing it could be less of a follow-up season and more of a middle-aged man-child with a sledgehammer breaking the Legos he didn't create. I guess time will tell, of course, but let me know what you think about this retcon and such within the Fallout universe, but now, let's head into the next story. So, do you enjoy owning your games? Well, too bad, because your opinion doesn't matter according to Ubisoft. From Eurogamer, we have this article titled, Ubisoft reportedly revoking the crew from owners' libraries following server shutdown. So this is kind of crazy, but I fear we're going to be seeing a lot more of this in the future, and that does not fill me with joy, fellas, I gotta admit. So Ubisoft has turned off all support for the servers when it comes to their game The Crew. This happened in March 2024 apparently. The game has been delisted from the online store across the board, and all multiplayer function within The Crew no longer works if you try to play the game. But the crazier part is that while The Crew has a robust single-player experience as well, that too can no longer be accessed either. So basically anyone who bought The Crew and then spent money on microtransactions within the game or just wants to play it in general can no longer do so. Remember, Ubisoft did say earlier this year that players should get comfortable with not owning their games. What's insane is that players quickly realized The Crew was not only unplayable, but the game's license was revoked from every single player's library as well. So you can't even download and install the game ever again. The Crew has also been confirmed to be moved to a subsection of Ubisoft Connect's folders called inactive games, meaning it's official, The Crew is dead completely. All that money that someone spent or time they used to play, gone. It's all gone. This is nuts, dude. Apparently you can only launch the game now via Steam in demo mode, but the client then asks you for a game key, which of course you don't have access to anymore because Ubisoft ripped ownership out of the hands of paying customers across the board without their say-so. When asked for why they did this, Ubisoft responded by saying, "We announced on December 14, 2023 that after almost a decade of support we would be decommissioning The Crew 1 on March 31st, 2024. While we understand this may be disappointing for players, it was necessary due to server infrastructure and licensing constraints." This entire situation is crazy to me because it shows how easily game publishers and companies can just rip your games from your libraries without remorse. And a ton of people on Reddit especially are clamoring to understand how this business practice can even be considered legal to begin with. Because at this point, buying any game at all means you don't ever actually own the game in question. A lot of games these days that are single player, like the upcoming Star Wars Outlaws for example, also confirm that you do need an internet connection in order to play it. Even though Outlaws is, according to Ubisoft, a single-player game, so why would an internet connection be required? It's simple, because they are sticking true to their push that you do not own the games that you buy, and essentially every game in your library right now is nothing more but an expensive rental at best. I cannot in good faith look at a company like Ubisoft and pay them full price for a game I do not own in any legal sense. The fact there's plenty of players out there who played The Crew and likely spent hundreds of dollars on microtransactions and DLC packs for cars, and now they have nothing to show for it. Hundreds of dollars and hours just evaporated into the digital ether, and the players have no say in any of it. Game preservation is a big problem already, and I think we need all games that are older to be available on newer age hardware. Cause there's too many games that you simply cannot play on modern hardware because they've been left to rot on older consoles with no way of porting or anything. For example, I love Tales of Exilia. As of the making of this video anyway, it's not available on PS4 or PS5, it's only on PS3. So I can't play the game on my newer console because of the lack of game preservation, and that kinda sucks. But Ubisoft is now attempting to treat players like nothing more than cash pigs, and they clearly don't respect the player experience already to begin with. Star Wars Outlaws' most expensive edition, which has all the DLC, expansions, packs, and the full game at launch, that retails for $170 Canadian. Yet if I buy that in a few years or something when Ubisoft's licensing agreement with Star Wars ends, they will just pull the same thing they did with The Crew here as well. And that money you spent alongside whatever other premium nonsense currency DLC crap Ubisoft will no doubt have available in-game at launch will just evaporate into the ether. I know even the developers are likely unhappy about this too. They spent all this time making these games, and for what? The CEOs and shareholders get their money, and once the well dries up, they just delist the game, erase it from existence, and now neither the players nor the developers have anything to show for it. This entire industry is a joke, man. When they're not drowning in virtue signaling, they're getting gutted for money and talent while spitting in the faces of developers and players alike. There was also this other story which was just so stupid, but it's titled, "Former Blizzard boss Mike Ybarra would like to tip developers." Mike Ybarra said via Twitter, and I quote, "I thought about this idea for a while as a player since I've been diving into single player games lately. When I beat a game, there are some that just leave me in awe of how amazing the experience was. At the end of the game, I've often thought I wish I could give these folks another $10 or $20. because it was worth more than my initial $70 and they didn't try to nickel and dime me every second. Games like Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, Red Dead Redemption 2, Baldur's Gate 3, Elden Ring, etc. I know $70 is already a lot, but it's an option at the end of the game I wish I had at times. Some games are that special. I know most will dislike this idea. By the way, I realize we are tired of tipping and everything else, but I view this different from a pressure to tip type scenario many face and give feedback on." End quote. I'm going to be honest with you guys, I think this idea is moronic as hell, since largely speaking, many AAA Western games especially are not even worth the price they're asking to begin with. Most of them launch broken and full of pandering, and now this executive who's made millions off of gaming thinks we should tip game devs? How exactly would that even work? If I tip $10 to From Software, does that $10 get split into how many employees work there on the game? Like, does every dev get, I don't know, 5 cents of my $10 to split it evenly? What would happen if one of the devs left the company? Do they still get it, or does someone else? Not to mention, devs have set salaries to begin with, so wouldn't this money just get thrown into the pockets of greedy publishers anyways? The entire concept is stupid and it makes zero sense. I know stuff like Spotify, for example, is a similar option, but in Spotify's case, you're tipping the band or artist, who's usually between 1 or 4 people per band, maybe more depending. But when that number, especially in AAA studios, skyrockets to something like 300 plus people per game, this concept becomes insane. Of course, leave it to an already greedy, out-of-touch former Blizzard executive to think of something as stupid as this. Most AAA Western games should have to tip me for playing their god-awful experiences, not the other way around. But between this moronic idea and the fact games aren't even yours when you pay 100% of the asking price just proves that we're heading into some dark waters in the future. Ever notice how even when you buy most AAA games these days physically, once you put the disc in, it just makes you download the game from the online store anyway? So the disc is pretty much useless then? Congratulations, that's another game you probably bought that can also have its license revoked at any moment. It just doesn't make any sense to me. How can a company get to keep the money you spent, but you don't get to keep the product? It's as if Ubisoft is looking at their video games as very expensive movie theater tickets. And once the show is over and the lights are turned on, you're asked to leave and you're left with nothing tangible in your hands. Video games are not movie tickets, and I think all of this will end up doing is making people not buy these games at release or at all. This is Ubisoft after all. Their games will be cheap a month after release anyways, but give it even 6 months and their games always dip to comically low prices. Cause their value as a publisher devalues so quickly. You ask me? I hate this idea. I think people need to vote with their wallets. So I guess any previous Ubisoft game I own, I don't actually own then. Very cool. And when they're not revoking your ownership, even more shenanigans is happening, like this article from That Park Place titled, "Capcom Goes Full Woke, Reveals Its Localization Team Alters Video Games for Cultural Appropriation, Preserving Context and Inclusive Storytelling." Out of all the stories in this video, this one worries me the most because Capcom tends to make good games mostly, and now this is happening. According to the Capcom Localization Twitter account, they said stuff like, "What is localization? Embark on a global adventure through the lens of game localization. Beyond mere translation, we're diving into the art of cultural adaptation. Preserving context and inclusive storytelling. Join us as we unravel the intricacies that make games resonate worldwide. Localization isn't just about translating words, it's about adapting the game for a global audience. Think cultural nuances, idioms, and regional flair. A good localization makes players feel right at home wherever in the world they are." Sounds normal so far, right? But wait, it gets worse where they say this. Cultural sensitivity in characters, character design, and development must be culturally sensitive. What may be acceptable in one culture might be offensive in another. Localizers play a crucial role in ensuring that characters are relatable and respectful. Avoiding stereotypes or other references that could be perceived as negative in specific cultures. Inclusive language and representation. Localization efforts extend to promoting inclusivity through language and representation. This involves adapting not only the linguistic aspects but also addressing gender-specific language, culture norms, and diverse perspectives. The aim is to create an immersive experience where players from different backgrounds can identify with the characters and narrative. This can be very challenging for certain languages due to grammar. Yeah, that last part there, this can be challenging because of the grammar of certain languages. They mean stuff like Latinx. Because that language is designed for only male and female pronouns, so of course that's a problem when you're woke. Good God, why is Capcom doing this, dude? This is a terrible idea. Grum said on Twitter that these tenets and ideas are based on the Osaka-based localization team, which is apparently full of Westerners and localization who are extremely left-leaning and control the narrative around there. So Westerners have invaded the East and are pushing their mind virus nonsense inside of it, and remember, it's not just Capcom but Nintendo as well, that is also looking to insert DEI into their games based on recent job postings like this one on screen now. None of this is okay, and I fear the future of Capcom could become terrible like many Western-led companies. And these insane people will not stop until everything adheres to their ideas. If you care about Capcom's games, which I figure you likely do, let your opinions be known. Email Capcom, tell them on their social feeds, and yell it from the rooftops that we do not want this in games. The last thing I need is a Devil May Cry 6 where Dante looks into the eyes of a female slayer and unironically says, "Why would the world need me when it has you?" And then I'll become the Joker, because Capcom will destroy themselves by doing this. Especially when they've been having home run after home run by adhering to their principles and not what Western weirdos want. Nothing good can come from this, and I cringe at the thought of what this sort of mentality could mean for the future of stuff like DMC, Resident Evil, or Monster Hunter. Oh man, we're about to get some ugly ass character designs going forward, aren't we? Whether it's mad creators like Todd Howard retconning game lore because it's better than what his team has done, Ubisoft telling you to be comfortable for not owning anything, ex-executives thinking it's a good idea to tip publishers, and now Capcom going woke. Oh man, god damn it. I feel tired after making this video, the Capcom stuff especially. The fact they caved in like this makes me feel defeated and sad. Please make your voice heard. I don't want to boycott Capcom games, but they need to not do this. I'm just hoping that Stellar Blade sets the world on fire when it releases soon, and the base sexiness of that game reignites a spark in the hearts of devs the world over. A sexier and more badass future for gaming is needed. I guess all hope right now lies on Stellar Blade, fellas. As always, thank you for watching. Let me know what you think too. Thank you to my patrons, and like, subscribe, and share the video to spread the message. Have a wonderful day, make your voices heard, and stay strong. I'll see you in the next one.